Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap and I have actually already been talking for about 20 minutes prior to this podcast. We should have just recorded another podcast talking about football as the season winds down in the NFL. But we are talking about the NBA here in the NBA exclusively on this show, Sap, and a team that we like to talk about a lot because they're really interesting, and they have your favorite player on it, the Lakers. They have been playing a little bit of better basketball recently, and that maybe comes from one, Russell Westbrook. Obviously, LeBron is, the real driving force there, but Westbrook's been playing a little bit better recently, as highlighted by, I believe it was the first time in 9 years he had a game with 0 turnovers. That's not, I didn't make that up. That's a real number. That's not something I just made up. Some people even believe that the man is better than Steph Curry because of some dubious statistics. But Sap, what have you seen recently from Russell Westbrook?
Well, I mean, last night he had 2 assists, no turnovers, so it didn't appear that he was playing as aggressively as he normally does. Look, Russell Westbrook is what he is. He's in his 13th season. They are not going to change him. He plays basketball a certain way, and he's going to continue to do that. He's not all of a sudden going to become a passive player. He's not going to morph into the heady point guard a la Chris Paul. That's just not going to happen. He's going to be a loose cannon on defense because he's more interested in grabbing rebounds than defending the perimeter, and that hurts the Lakers. But, he's going to play because one thing we can say about Russell Westbrook, he is durable. He's played every game this year. I mean, he was in the COVID protocol and somehow tested out of it and never missed a game. So we know he's going to show up. He's going to play 35, 36 minutes. I think some of his intensity and hustle is misguided and somewhat overrated because, again, on the defensive end, I just think he's like a non-factor. He just kind of runs around like a chicken with his head cut off and hopes to grab rebounds. And I think that's what he does on defense. And on offense, again, he'll crash the boards, not get a rebound, and next thing you know, it's a 4-on-3 or 3-on-2 the other way, and he's nowhere to be found. But nonetheless, he seems to be playing a little bit better in terms of that. So the turnovers are certainly a problem with him. He's right among the league leaders in turnovers, nearly 5 turnovers per game. That's horrible. But the reason the Lakers have won 3 in a row and won 4 out of 5 is LeBron's playing at an incredible level. And now he's playing center, which, again, the reason I think he's the greatest player in the history of the sport is he could do more on the court than anybody that's ever played. I mean, he could be the best point guard in the NBA if he wanted to, and I think he could be the best center in the NBA if he wanted to, or certainly a different type of center than, say, Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic. So the Lakers are playing better, but they haven't really beaten anybody of note, right? I mean, they're life or death with Sacramento or
it's
Portland
weird that
or some of
LeBron
these
is
teams.
like, it's, celebrating like, he won the NBA finals, dunking over Sacramento, but Sacramento, they're terrible. But I do think they figured something out a little bit here. They've won 4 of their last 5, 3 in a row. LeBron is playing at a, like a Herculean level. I don't know if it's reasonable to expect a 37-year-old LeBron to put up these kind of numbers night in and night out, especially once the playoffs start and the schedule gets more condensed. I think that is a monumental ask, but I do think that they have figured something out to the point where they're not going to be, I would be surprised if they dip below 500, more than a game below 500 for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, too, is we're talking about LeBron, who playing like this isn't a surprise. He's in his 19th year, and he's still right there with Giannis, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry as the 4 best players in the sport. So that's not really a surprise the way he's playing. He's not far off from leading the league in scoring, which I think would be a feather in his cap if he pulled that off. If he's able to win a scoring title in his 19th season at the age of 37,
he's got to qualify. That's going to be the tricky thing for him.
I think he'll be all right. He's only missed 12 games, and I don't expect him to miss a lot more because Anthony Davis is out till February, and the Lakers, he's going to have to play in the regular season because, they don't want to be in the play-in tournament. If they can get to the 5 seed and play Memphis in the first round or whatever, that's a good spot to be. And I still think as good as Golden State and Phoenix have been, they're both susceptible to teams that have size. And the Lakers do have size, provided Anthony Davis returns. And I was watching Kendrick Perkins earlier today, and I know we're going to talk about Perk later on in the podcast, but he made a really good point. He thinks that LeBron is playing center, playing at a very high level, while Anthony Davis is out, to kind of show Anthony Davis, like, I'm 37, I'm in my 19th year, I'm playing the goddamn position. Like, you're 10 years younger than me. You've played 40% or 30% of the games I've played in my career. When you get back, take it over. Like, this is supposed to be a time for LeBron to pull back a little bit, right? Like, not have to carry a team, but to have Anthony Davis maybe as their best player, or at least as they co-star along with LeBron James. And since they won the championship, Anthony Davis continues to get worse and worse and worse and less durable, which seems almost impossible because he's never been durable. So I think Perk had a really good point there, saying LeBron's playing center as if to show Anthony Davis, look, if I can do this at 37 in my 19th year, why can't you? Because that's when the Lakers are at their best, when he's playing center, maybe LeBron's playing power forward, and then you go from there. One other thing I want to point out why the Lakers are playing a little bit better now, I think Malik Monk has really stepped up. Again,
no doubt. I was about to mention that.
Young, athletic guy who can shoot threes. I think when Kendrick Nunn comes back, that's going to help the Lakers as well. Shorten the bench too. I mean, they just have too many players. And a few days ago, they traded Rajon Rondo, which I think makes some sense. They sent him to Cleveland after the Rubio injury. So I think that makes sense too, because you don't need 16 guys on your roster, or 15 obviously is the limit, but it seems like they have 15 legitimate NBA players. I mean, this isn't a baseball roster or a football roster where you have to go that deep into the roster to get through the regular season. So I think Malik Monk has been a huge reason. But, Westbrook, if Westbrook plays solidly and doesn't lead the league in turnovers, which is a real possibility because he's done it 4 times, and at least they get him playing in the right direction, then they should be okay. Win a championship? I don't know. We're midway through the season and they're a game over 500. That's still not a really good look.
Yeah, obviously Monk is a big factor in this, and that he's, I think over the last 5 games, he's averaging 20 points a game. Mm-hmm. He's somebody that I always liked coming out of Kentucky. I think he had a 50-point game in college in one of his first mm-hmm. games as a freshman, which, if you followed college basketball at all, 50-point games are few and far between, like seasons, mm-hmm. you'll go multiple seasons without a 50-point game. So that shows that you can score. I think he just kind of ran into a log jam in Charlotte, and there's no way he's a minimum contract player right now. There's no way he should be a minimum contract player. That's mm-hmm. silly. The Lakers got him and Nunn both on minimum contracts. Both of those guys are far better than that. So he's gonna next year, I would imagine, command some free agency money. And so, he's playing his way into a nice contract. But while he's on the Lakers and they can afford him, this is going to pay big dividends for them. And I'm surprised it took him this long to get going, or maybe it's more, that's more of a commentary on Frank Vogel for not, inserting him into the lineup earlier. But I definitely think he's an asset for them. Like you said, young, can shoot, athletic. So yeah, that's going to certainly help. And we'll see. But I think for now, they're playing better. You can, certainly say, okay, well, who have they beaten recently? A bunch of crap teams, and that's true. But you got to start by beating the crap teams instead of losing to them, which Lakers earlier in the season were losing to every crap team in the book. So you got to start by beating them, and then you play your way into above 500 record, and then you start playing with the competitive playoff teams. So I think they figured something out. I don't like to admit that because I would love to see them bottom out, much like my Celtics are. But I think that they're on the right track here.
Yeah, they still have LeBron James, which he can cover a lot of sins. The other thing, or he can forgive a lot of sins. But the other thing I like him playing center is on the defensive end. He's kind of playing free safeties, like Ed Reed back there, where he's got his head facing the offense, and also has his 4 fellow defenders in his periphery, so that he can kind of put them where he wants to. We know his basketball IQ is through the roof, right? I mean, whoever you think is the smartest player in the history of the NBA, he's in the discussion, whether it's Magic or Bird or Bill Russell or, whoever. Right. So on the defensive end, while he's playing center, it's not the NBA of 10, 15 years ago where playing center is just going to physically wear him out, but he can really be active on the pick and roll. Both offensively and defensively, but he also can just set up his defense by being that far close to the basket, and there's less wear and tear that he's not chasing a wing around. He's not going to go up against Golden State in a series, and his responsibility is Andrew Wiggins or someone like that. So he can be, down low. It's not a physical game anymore, and he can kind of set things up there. But yeah, I think he's going to be fine. We got to see what Anthony Davis is when he comes back. And again, Westbrook is the big factor. And when Westbrook's gone to a new place, he's generally played better the second half of the year than the first half of the year. So that's one hope that you can have if you're a Laker fan.
Yeah, and I think another thing that plays to their advantage, Sap, is how weak the bottom half of the Western Conference is.
Yeah.
I mean, after the top four seeds, there's just a massive drop off in terms of records. The top four, as it stands today, it's Golden State. Phoenix is a half game behind them. 2.5 behind them is Utah. Memphis is 5.5 back of the one seed, and then three teams, Denver, Dallas, and the Lakers, are all bunched up at 10.5 games out of first place. The Clippers 11, 12.5 for the Timberwolves, and 14.5 for the Kings. Those are the play-in tournament teams. So, the Lakers have this nice cushion of, well, we can play our way up, no problem, to the 5 seed. As of right now, they're separated by 0.01 of a win in winning percentage with those teams, and they're the 7th seed right now. So they have that, even though they struggled to start the season, a lot of teams in the Western Conference have struggled to start the season.
The whole league, really, Jed. I think like half the league is around 500, right? You've got a bunch of teams, not really a bunch of teams, a half a dozen teams that look like they're elite. And those teams, by the way, include like the Chicago Bulls that I'm not totally sold on, although it's a great story.
Great story, yeah.
It's a great story, really. I mean, DeMar DeRozan looks like he's morphed into Kawhi Leonard, at this point.
Yeah, no, he's been
not quite that
fantastic.
good, but he's been phenomenal. Certainly an MVP candidate. But, I mean, do you still buy the Chicago Bulls? Do you buy the Cleveland Cavaliers? Do you buy, other teams that are up there in the Eastern Conference? Certainly you do Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Those are generally considered the two best teams in the East. And I think, if I was a betting man, I'd say, yeah, they'll probably meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, Brooklyn and Milwaukee. But in the West, yeah, I mean, even the top teams up there, again, I think Phoenix and Golden State are susceptible to size.
No, we've talked about this. There's nobody that's like, holy crap, this team
again,
unstoppable.
Last year, the Lakers with a, kind of a mishmash of a roster, Anthony Davis playing on one leg, LeBron not himself, they went 6 games with Phoenix in the first round. They were up 2-1 in that series and up 10 points in the second quarter when Anthony Davis got hurt. Like, if they win that game, they're up 3-1 and probably win that series, and probably they're in the finals against Milwaukee, and who the hell knows what would happen. So I wouldn't count the Lakers out. It just doesn't. The process is kind of weird because, again, there's a lot of question marks with Westbrook, with Davis. LeBron, I don't worry about unless he gets hurt. And look, he's in his 19th year. That's always a possibility. But I do like the fact that the younger guys like Kendrick Nunn will be coming back soon, and Malik Monk will be playing more minutes. And you kind of moved on from Rondo. Maybe you move on from some other veterans, DeAndre Jordan at some point, because the real quality backup big man that you have, Dwight Howard's fine. You don't need Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan. Just give me Dwight Howard at this point. So I think they'll start to pair the roster, maybe make a small move at the trade deadline, and they can go on their way, to being even the 4th or 5th seed. You play Memphis in that first round. As great as Ja Morant is, and as well coached as Memphis is, you still got to favor LeBron and Anthony Davis and those guys over Memphis. Although I have no clue who would guard Ja Morant. That would be almost laughable because the perimeter defense of the Lakers is not very good. I mean, just picture Westbrook trying to check Ja Morant. That would not be a really good sight.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a little bit about the Grizzlies and specifically Ja Morant, Sap. That now that you bring it up, they've been playing spectacular this season. They're 25-14, which is the 4 seed in the West. I think that's far exceeding anybody's expectations, and they've done that in large part to Ja Morant, but he did also miss a significant amount of games with an injury, and the Grizzlies were able to completely hold serve and stay alive. And I think it's a young, talented, hungry team that has a lot of solid players on it. They clearly have a superstar on it. Or you don't like to say that. They have a clear star on the team.
No, he's trending in the direction of superstar. And I want to, when we, after we talk a little bit about him, I want to maybe play a quick game with you and talk about some other young stars in the league, or guys that are called superstars, and who you would take Morant or that player. But yeah, I mean, Memphis, like you said, Jets, 25-14. They're 15-12 with Morant, 10-2 without him. So that's kind of a weird thing. And I know Kendrick Perkins today on Get Up was talking about that Ja Morant is the MVP of the league, and I love Kendrick Perkins, I do, but this is the 9th different player that Kendrick Perkins has said is the MVP of the league. It was Durant, then it was Curry, then it was LeBron, then it was, Giannis, who I think right now should be the MVP of the league. Giannis, he's the best player in the league. And, when he's out there, he impacts the game more than anyone else because he's so good defensively. But as much as I love Ja Morant, again, they were 10-2 without him. So that's somewhat of a factor in there. The thing I will say about Ja Morant that I really like, Jet, is how he's improved every year. We've talked a little bit about Russell Westbrook, and Ja Morant's favorite player growing up was Russell Westbrook. And you could see some of the comparisons, right? Both 6'3", Westbrook's more, filled out. Obviously, he's 10 years older. Morant's, really thin. Probably will put 10 or 15 pounds of muscle on over the next few years, but has that same type of athletic ability that Westbrook's had, like the 6'3" point guard that you look at and go, holy crap, this guy could have been a goalkeeper in MLS. He could have been a cornerback in the NFL, a wide receiver, whatever. Pick any sport, a center fielder in baseball. Like, these guys are freakish athletes. But I think Ja Morant's more self-aware than Russell Westbrook. And, there was a quote from Westbrook early in the week that I know we're going to talk about where he says, I am what I am. Like the 9 turnovers I had in the game, not important. Like shots I missed, not important. I am what I am, which to me, he's not very self-aware. Ja Morant has improved greatly, right? Yeah. And this is 3rd year. Right now, he's averaging 25 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists per game. Here's what I like about Morant, Jet. He's shooting 52% from the floor, 40% from 3-point. That's great. 77% from the free throw line. His effective field goal percentage is .534, which is outstanding. Look at his improvement from last year to this year in those 4 categories. Last year, he shot 45% from the floor. This year, he's up to 52%. 3-point, he was at 30% last year, 40% this year. That's a huge improvement. He's improved at the free throw line, 73 to 77%. And again, his effective field goal percentage, 49% last year, 53.4% this year. He spent the offseason working on his free throw shooting and on his 3-point shooting. 2 things that Russell Westbrook every year gets worse at. Like, Russell Westbrook's now like a 66% free throw shooter, which is abysmal for a 6'3" point guard. You're going to get fouled a lot, especially when you go to the basket as much as these guys. But Ja Morant, 10 years younger than Westbrook, is a more mature player. He's understood where he has to get better, and he's much more self-aware than Russell Westbrook. And that's why I like Ja Morant. He could have just burst in the league and goes, well, this is what I am, right? Well, no, he's gotten better every single year. He may not be the MVP of the league, but he may be the most improved player, and that's saying a lot too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, points way up this year, steals way up, blocks are up slightly, assists slightly down, but that goes with him scoring more points. Right. Rebounds way the hell up. Last year was 4, this year it's 5.7. And you mentioned all the percentages all up. So basically up across the board, which is what you want to see as an emerging, superstar player, as you called him, Sap. And, while he may not be the MVP of the league, if the league had a award for the most, must watch player in terms of entertainment value, he might win that award. I think Steph Curry's held that for a long time. Russell Westbrook maybe had it for a season. Or 2, but I think he's the most must-watch, exciting NBA League Pass. Like, I would, I'll call it the League Pass Player of the Year.
I like that.
So I think that's certainly something that you could say about him, that he's exciting every time he takes the court. And Memphis has been playing some really good basketball. I obviously think, some people who point to their record that it was really good without Morant, saying, oh, maybe, he doesn't impact winning that much. I think that's foolish because they're still really good with him. Memphis is good. They have good players on their team. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a good player. Desmond Bane, who the Celtics for some reason traded away for nothing. He's a good player. They are building something in Memphis. I don't think that even if Morant reaches his, utmost potential and Jackson reaches his utmost potential, I still think they'd be a player away from being a championship contender. But to have a Memphis team that's really good and really exciting, they're certainly ahead of schedule, I think, in terms of where people thought they were going to be.
Yeah, without question, Jed. And again, some of the young players that, we sometimes, or at least some people use that label superstar, which I'm very hesitant to use, but I will use it with him because again, he's must-watch TV and he's impacting winning. So those are two great things for a young guy. And I just like that improvement. When I saw those numbers, I'm like, here's a guy who after a second year was heading to become an all-star. And instead of just resting on his laurels, he went out and worked his butt off and went from a 30% three-point shooter to a 40% three-point shooter. The other thing I like about him, he'll go mano a mano with Steph Curry or Chris Paul. He's beaten Golden State and he's beaten Phoenix this year, right? So he's not going to back down from all-time great players. Now, I want to throw a couple players out there, too, that, play pretty close to us who get called superstars, and I don't think they are. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I would take Ja Morant over either one of them. And again, I think he just has a more balls to the wall attitude, whereas Tatum is too cool for school. And Jaylen Brown, who, I love, and I love the fact that he's such a bright guy and does a lot of stuff off the court. Sometimes, he wants to be known as the brightest guy in the room, and maybe that's because he went to Cal, like my favorite quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. I think if you went to Cal, you just assume you're the smartest guy in every room. So, but I would take Ja Morant over both of those players. He's also younger, so it just seems like he's only going to get better, but I think he's more self-aware than those two players.
I think he probably is more self-aware. I'd certainly take him over Brown. I think it's a fair debate with Tatum, but I always defer to the taller player. And right. I've said this before with Ja Morant, and I'm not, I like Jason Tatum a lot. I'm not one of those guys that says the Celtics can't trade Jason Tatum under any circumstance. I think that's silly. I don't think he's fully lived up to his potential. That being said, I have said this about Ja Morant before. I am terrified about the injury factor with Ja Morant. Yeah. I've seen it so many times. I've compared him so much to John Wall. And I think he has so much of that in him where he's just crazy. And Derrick Rose, when he was in Chicago, it just seems almost inevitable with these guys. I mean, he's not tiny. He's 6'3", but he's not, I wouldn't say he's as stout as Russell Westbrook, though few players are.
No, he has one of the best bodies in the NBA. And again, Morant can maybe get closer to that. But yeah, I mean, you talked
it's
about.
It's hard to play that style of basketball
for that
and
long.
Not get hurt for that long
right.
And not get hurt.
Allen Iverson too, right? I mean, Allen Iverson, he was smaller than all of these guys. And he played, again, balls to the wall, like, just throwing their body out there. That's not easy to do and sustain that for a long
It's the same in, other sports, Sap, like a baseball player who slides all the time, like inevitably you're going to get hurt. If you're a running back that's seeking contact, like you're inevitably
a quarterback who runs, hurt. Right?
Quarterback who runs, perfect example.
Cam Newton. Yeah, look at Ben Roethlisberger now.
Only a matter of time.
Right.
Lamar Jackson has been dealing with injuries basically this whole season. Aggressiveness is great, and then some. It comes at a cost eventually. And I think Morant's spectacular. Eventually it's going to catch up with him because it's caught up to everybody who's played that style of basketball.
And we can address that when that happens. In the meantime, I think he's still going to have a good 8-10 year career because I love the fact, again, that he's more self-aware than Westbrook, Rose, or John Wall. They're all spectacular athletes who, driving to the basket, it's breathtaking to watch. They're all essentially the same size. I think Wall's 6'4". But the only thing is I like about Morant is he's determined that I need more in my golf bag than just that. So he's gone out and become a better three-point shooter. He's already a better three-point shooter than any of those guys have ever been. Now we're seeing Derrick Rose try to reinvent himself, but it's kind of late for that. I mean, he could still be a very effective player, except he's 33 years old. So Morant, who's a decade younger, got ahead of that earlier, right? So it would almost be like if Cam Newton earlier in his career figured out, well, maybe I don't have to run as much. I have to refine my passing skills. Then he could have had a longer career. I think Morant's already seen that.
Let me ask you this, Sap. Let me throw a question at you then. Can you take Steph Curry out of the equation here? Because he's a freak, greatest shooter of all time. He can shoot from the logo, no problem. Take him out of the equation. Can you win with a point guard being your best player? Win a title?
The Pistons did it with Isaiah Thomas, but they built a really good roster around him. And it was just.
I guess the question is, could Ja Morant be the best player in a championship team? I guess that's what it boils down to, right?
Yeah, And that's a tough question. Well, look at the champions we've seen over the years. I mean, it's, LeBron or Durant or Giannis or Steph. Again, putting Steph into that equation. And if Phoenix had won the title last year, you could have this existential discussion of who was the best player on Phoenix.
Right.
Chris Paul historically obviously is the best player, but was it Devin Booker or was it DeAndre Ayton?
And they didn't. They got bullied by a
and then they
guy.
got bullied at that point. Again, not Chris Paul's fault. I think more DeAndre Ayton didn't step up, and the coaching staff didn't make the proper adjustments to combat Giannis. They didn't build a wall, which is really the only thing you can do to try to combat, Giannis. It's almost like if you're going up against Tom Brady and you decide you're going to play zone against him, well, good luck. He's just going to pick you apart and you're going to lose. So the same thing with Giannis. I mean, you better build a wall. Let someone else beat you or let him go to the free throw line.
It's hard to, you can game plan for physical dominance, but at some point the physical dominance can just beat your game plan. That's the problem. So I'm saying, with Morant, and why I'm trepidatious to say he's better than Tatum, I'd rather have him than Tatum, is that ultimately the NBA is built around size. The teams have gone smaller and stuff like that, but I'm not saying I think Tatum can be the best player in a championship team either, but I think that history has shown it's really, you have to be an unbelievably special point guard a la Steph Curry or Isaiah Thomas to win a title with being the best player as a point guard on a team. It just doesn't really happen.
And I'll put Chris Paul in there, even though he hasn't won a championship. I'll say Chris Paul, Isaiah Thomas, Steph Curry, those guys highly skilled.
Well, and I'd also say Chris Paul is a perfect example, Sap, of showing that it doesn't happen. As great as Chris Paul is, and we think he's one of the greatest point guards of all time, one of the greatest players of all time, he hasn't won a championship. And he's been on some damn good teams.
But he can still play at a high level in his late 30s. That's more my point. Whereas, winning championships, obviously very important. But, we don't expect Westbrook, Rose, Wall, and now you're saying maybe Morant at 37 still being elite players because that athleticism leaves and you don't have something to fall back on. Whereas Chris Paul, who was, obviously he's a great athlete, he's playing in the NBA, but he didn't rely on athleticism. Curry doesn't necessarily rely on athleticism. Isaiah, I think, is the third greatest point guard in the history of the sport behind Magic and Curry. And I may even, I'll still battle that Isaiah's right there with Curry. Different type of player.
Again, I don't even know what position you can say Curry is really.
Right. He's a guard. The player I like to compare to Steph Curry, I know this is old school. A lot of what he does, Jerry West did, except West was a better defensive player. And that shows you how great Jerry West is. Lord knows what Jerry West would have averaged if they had the 3-point line back in the 60s, because he was a great shooter. But West again was, excellent passer, rebounded really well for a 6'2", 6'3" guard. Again, different times, I know, but he was also a very good defensive player, which Curry's not. More of a team help defender. West was a legit good defensive player. So Curry kind of breaks the mold, as do the great players, right? Like, I know LeBron's technically a small forward, but he's playing center now. He played point guard 2 years ago.
No, when you're talking about star players, you got to separate them from the all-time great players. It's
like Larry Bird was a forward. Like Larry Bird wasn't a small forward or a power forward. He was just a forward.
I guess you would call him a point forward, right? Same with LeBron.
He did everything. Yeah, right. He did everything. When you do that, there's certain positions where you go.
Or if you're playing small forward, you're averaging 9 assists. You're not really playing the position as it was traditionally intended.
No, and 10 rebounds. Bird for his career averaged 25, 10, and 6, and that included the last 3 years where he was hobbled. Like in his 8-year prime, he was like a 27, 11, and 7 guy, which is ridiculous.
Well, it's funny too. It's like someone like Sap is Jokic. He's a center, but
he's passes really well for a center, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's like, what do you really call him? I guess he's a big, but he's like a point center. He's the best passer on their team.
Well, that's why we've redefined it, right, Jet? Like it's kind of like smalls, wings, and bigs, right? So maybe we'll just leave it at that. So Curry's a small who's just ridiculous shooter. LeBron's a wing, and maybe we'll call Jokic and Embiid and Rudy Gobert and Cat, bigs. But they're
it's funny though. It's like Jokic sticks out with like a sore thumb in that group because he doesn't play like any of those other guys.
No, he really looks like the old guy at the Y. It's kind of comical. I don't know if I've ever seen a great player have less athletic ability than Nikola Jokic. Like, I mean, I never thought that Paul Pierce was a great athlete. He was more of a skilled basketball player, and kind of played like the old man at the Y that you play against, and you're just so frustrated that he's the best player in the court. He's 15 years older than everyone, and is wearing a knee brace and a headband, and you're like, how the hell is this guy dominating? Well, he's skilled. He knows how to play the game of basketball. It's what you kind of see with Nikola Jokic, whereas Embiid is different.
Yeah, I know Embiid's a freak, but it's like with Jokic too, you're like, he doesn't look that athletic. And with guys who typically, are among the league leaders in rebounding, you're like, when Dwight Howard was dominating, you're like, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. He gets every rebound. How is Jokic getting 14 rebounds a game? How is it happening?
It's crazy. It really is. Again, he doesn't jump for them.
Right.
Bird averaged 10 rebounds a game. And again, in his prime, it was closer to 11, 12 without jumping. I mean, most rebounds are below the rim. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, Barkley and Rodman were guys who just kind of, Barkley just jumped over people. And he also had the girth, even at 6'4", to just box people out. And Rodman was probably the most relentless rebounder I've ever seen. So yeah, what Jokic does, you kind of watch and say, how the hell is that happening? Again, it just looks like he's playing with his kids at the Y, and he's got his skill set, and he also seems to slow the game down, which is what the great players do. Like he's, gives you a little head fake, bounce pass, and he sees the game much slower than everyone, which again, all the greats seem to be able to do. But yeah, I mean, Ja Morant, I don't think he's the MVP of the league. Again, it's tough to say he's the MVP of the league when he's missed 12 games and the team went 10-2 during those 12 games. Heck, LeBron's missed 12 games this year, and the Lakers are 5-7 when he doesn't play. So, I mean, if I was voting right now, and I think next week we'll probably do maybe our midseason awards, I think Giannis is the MVP, only because of all these candidates, he's the one guy on the defensive end that's elite. LeBron can be elite on the defensive end, but he's not anymore. Durant is good defensively. Curry sometimes is a albatross defensively, and Morant, I don't know yet because I don't think we've seen enough of him. But yeah, Morant is. I think he's a superstar. I think he's moving into that category, and I would take him over either Brown or Tatum. But one other player I want to throw out there who was in his draft class, New Orleans took Zion first. And Zion's probably not even going to play this year. And we're talking about a man who now weighs 330 pounds. I
don't know what the hell's going on with him. I mean, I don't fault them for taking him first at all. It's a no-brainer. And if you look at, I was looking at the, I think I have this stat saved somewhere on my phone, Sap. Most points or highest field goal percentage before turning 24 or something like that. And he had that number. His when he plays, he's absurdly, it's
he's
just
awesome.
It's freakish. But it just, I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if this is all, if he has no self-control or self-discipline with the eating. I don't know if it's the injury is limiting his working out ability because it's a foot thing. I don't know if he just has no interest in playing in New Orleans and is trying to do everything possible he can to get the hell out of, out of New Orleans and possibly to New York. But right now, I mean, certainly it looks like, Memphis made out like bandits getting him, getting Morant second in the draft. And meanwhile, New Orleans is dealing with this Zion situation, which is just, I mean, it's an albatross hanging over their entire franchise. People don't even know if he's going to sign his rookie extension, Sap.
Which has never been done, right, by a top-level player. So, yeah, I mean, at some point, he's got to get on the court to show that he can play again. You can't just show up on the court at 330 pounds and probably get hurt again. I just hope he doesn't turn into Greg Oden, who never had a career. Obviously, Bill Walton's in the Hall of Fame, but, Bill Walton only played 500-plus games because of injuries.
Seth, I found the stat. This is the stat I saw this put on the TV the other day when I was watching the Celtics play the Sixers, and they were talking about Joel Embiid. All-time points per 36 minutes, all-time, Zion Williamson leads the NBA. That's not recently, that's all-time, 29.2 points per 36 minutes.
That's
Second,
crazy.
Joel Embiid. Third is Michael Jordan. Fourth is George Gervin. Fifth is Luka Doncic. I mean, it's, again, small sample size, but it shows the potential. So I don't fault New Orleans for making the pick, but someone's got to talk. I would love to have an interview with this guy, and it seems like nobody's talked to him. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, it's like radio silence, right? Like we don't even hear reports of it. All we do is occasionally see a picture where you go, he's heavy. Like even when he was playing, he was 285, probably 290, which for a guy 6'6" is huge. It's huge. 6'6", 330. That's like an NFL offensive tackle, but that's not the type of body you want to have playing in the NBA. So there's a lot of wear and tear.
Not if you want to have a career more than 4 years.
No, exactly. I mean, we worry about Ja Morant because he's an extremely gifted athlete, but I think Ja Morant's in shape. Like we're not going to worry that Ja Morant's going to, bow out of a game because he's stiff or, tired or whatever.
Knowing what we know right now, Sap, if you read the draft, you'd have to take Morant 1, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, because Zion's missed more games than he's played, and it's not even close at this point. It's just like he hasn't played enough to even I'm almost going to kid about this. I mean, would he be eligible for Rookie of the Year in his third year or fourth year? I mean, obviously that doesn't happen, but
Ben Simmons award, yeah.
Ben Simmons did win Rookie of the Year in his second year. It's like, I remember when Jacoby Ellsbury came up with the Red Sox, he was always hurt. I'm like, he could be eligible for Rookie of the Year in his fifth year because he never played enough.
But MLB does that though, right?
I think there's certain things,
to be eligible.
So, I mean, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, we're going to have somebody that's the best player.
Well,
in the league.
everything they do is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean they fire a guy from MLB Network, Ken Rosenthal, because writing for The Athletic, he criticized the commissioner, so that's a good thing.
Who's a boob, by the way? He's a bad commissioner.
Oh yeah, I mean he may be he's probably the worst commissioner in sports. Like at least terrible. Roger Goodell is like they're making money and the product is still incredibly, popular. I mean, I think we both agree, and not because we're doing an NBA podcast. Adam Silver's the best commissioner in sports. It's not even close. He doesn't have to beat out much. But
Gary Bettman's looking at him and saying, "Thank God I'm not that guy."
Yeah, Gary Bettman, I think, has probably done a better job with hockey than he's
gotten hockey on major network now. So
yeah, baseball's still like. Who's watching these games? No one. It's like it's become a regional sport, as is hockey, obviously. But yeah. So as far as Zion, yeah, I hope, because I like him. I think he's a great personality. I talked a year ago when we talked about who's the future face of the league, and I picked him. Well, you can't be the face of the league if you're not playing.
No, it's one of two things. It's the Greg Oden thing where his career is going to wind down, or it's Joel Embiid, where, it took a couple of years for him to get the nagging injuries and then he's going to dominate. So we'll have to see. Wrapping up with Ja Morant, Sep, I would say, okay, I agree. He's not the MVP of the league. He's not going to win it this year. I would start him in the All-Star game though. And maybe that's tipping our hand for when we're going to do All-Star starters. Obviously Curry is the main backcourt starter in the Western Conference.
Yeah. I would say so. I have no problem with that. I mean, would you have to put Chris Paul or Devin Booker in there because their team is so good? Donovan Mitchell's had a really good year.
But so are the Grizzlies.
Even
have
Memphis
a damn good record. So
yeah, they're on a 50-win pace.
I would start him.
So your guards that we'll probably discuss, obviously Curry, Chris Paul, Morant, Booker, Donovan Mitchell, because Utah's playing really well. I mean, we still have about another month before we do the All-Star selections, so he'll be able to build up his games played. I mean, he's missed 12 of 39, which is 30% of the games. It's tough to name an All-Star starter that's missed 30% of his team's game, but by the time we get there, it'll be closer to 20%, and certainly he deserves to make it. And I think he's a very popular player. I mean, he's playing in Memphis, but we've said this a million times, Jed, a star is a star. I mean, Westbrook was a huge star in Oklahoma City, as was Durant. That's not a huge market. This isn't 1979 where the stars had to play in, Boston, Philadelphia, LA, or New York. It's different in the NBA now. Like, they'll put Oklahoma City on a lot if they have stars.
Sure.
They're not exclusive because of where they play. And if the Knicks aren't good, no one's going to want to watch them. So yeah, I think that's the potential there for him to be an all-star starter without question. And that's a great thing in his third year in a conference that's loaded with great backcourt players.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put him over Lillard, certainly, based off just team record alone.
Yeah, Lillard's not had a great year either, but Lillard will make it on reputation and on the fact that everybody just loves the guy. He's one of the most popular players in the league, even among other players.
Put him over Westbrook.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, man. Oh God, Westbrook somehow will make it and screw the whole game up. But he'll be the one guy out there that plays his ass off in the All-Star game. He's won the MVP a couple times, hasn't he? Because it's like,
I mean, that tracks. My favorite was a couple years ago when Kyle Lowry was playing at the end of the All-Star game and drawing charges.
oh yeah. Well, that's your guy,
Love
Kyle
that.
Lowry. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's why last year I think going to the All-Star game, I said, I think Giannis is going to win the MVP of this game because he's going to be the only guy out there that like is trying. And didn't he go like 16 for 17 from the floor?
No, he was whatever it was perfect. I don't think he missed.
I don't think he missed a shot. I think he may have missed a 3-pointer, but he was just running down the court and getting fed.
I remember he banked in a 3-pointer.
Yeah, which is, something Westbrook does quite often. Westbrook had a shot last week where he went up to shoot. They fouled him so hard that, it changed the shot and it went in. Like, I think if no one touched him, it would have been an air ball. Yeah, it's almost like having a pass that's, inaccurate, but somehow gets deflected right to the receiver you intended to go. That's how inaccurate it is. And I look at Westbrook, and I know we've talked a lot about him in this podcast, but he's shooting like 65% from the free throw line. I mean, a lot of his shots like are air balls. A lot of his shots are like bank shots that don't bank in. Or he had one last week where it was an 18-footer from the side. I think he was trying to bank it, and it actually went and hit the top of the backboard. I really question. I mean, he should get his eyes checked. I'm not being funny here. This is coming from a man who has glaucoma. So right. I
can say it. Yeah,
I can say it. Like, maybe I'm not saying I don't hope that Russell Westbrook. I don't think he has glaucoma, but get your eyes checked. They have LASIK surgery, or could you picture Westbrook wearing glasses on the court? That would be perfect.
Because break them in half. Break them in half.
But that would be like a guy who I think everybody in the court kind of looks at him sideways, like this guy's a little insane. Now put like thick glasses on him. He'd be like Jim Carrey and the Cable Guy, right? You'd just be like, whoa, don't get near this guy. He's wearing knee pads, elbow pads, headbands. I mean, it'd be like scary out there, but maybe he needs to do that. I mean, I don't know. Jameis Winston, didn't he have LASIK surgery in the offseason and he was throwing the ball more accurately?
I don't know if he had LASIK surgery, but he was throwing the ball more accurately.
He was, yeah, he did, yeah. I if that's the case, go ahead. Like growing up, Jim Rice was one of my favorite players. He didn't want to wear glasses when he played, and I know he got LASIK surgery later in life because he goes to the same eye doctor I go to, and they have this big signed shirt of him, and underneath it says, "Thank you for giving me 20/20 vision." I mean, if that existed back in the 70s and 80s, Lord knows what Jim Rice would have done with 20/20 vision.
That's a good point, Sap. So we'll see.
I got a lot of them. I got a lot of them
tweeting at Russell Westbrook saying get LASIK. I'm sure
he'd take that well. Yeah, I mean, he seems like a
guy
who
takes criticism very well.
Very well, yeah. Like probably no one in the NBA you would do that to, right? I don't think any of them would take that all that well.
No. So that's going to do it for us, Sap, here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented as always by Full Press Coverage. We'll be back tomorrow with a new edition of the pod talking about the unfortunate return of Kyrie Irving, the happy return of Klay Thompson, and I believe Dirk Nowitzki is getting his number retired tonight or tomorrow by Dallas. We'll talk about his career and where he stands amongst the all-time greats. So plenty to talk about tomorrow. And hopefully Kyrie Irving has a bad game in his debut. I don't wish ill will on him in terms of, health or anything, but I hope he's terrible on the basketball court. That's all I can say, Sap. All right, that's going to do it. Check out the show wherever podcasts are found. Again, it's the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Check out our social medias at JohnSap25 at Jet Stryer, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. See ya.